Hi. So this is my dad. He's a scientist.
Hi.
And we were talking the other day about, science as we do. And we were talking about vaccination and people misunderstanding like what the actual vaccines are, and most people have heard that the Pfizer and the Moderna are using a technology that uses mRNA, which is a part of our...
It's a natural thing in our cells, messenger RNA.
Messenger RNA. So I hadn't really heard an exact explanation of the mechanics of how that works, and so Dad's understands that from his work as a science researcher, but also you had done your own research, just figuring it out from reading.
Yeah, reading, and I worked with virologists. I shared office with virologists.
Right.
Anyway, well, the messenger RNA, just kind of a background on what our cells are doing naturally is, so we're just made up of cells which have a membrane around the cell, which is very selective about what it lets in and lets out.
Right.
And
it kind of needs a certain key to be let through into our cells.
A chemical or a virus or anything tries to come in, even chemicals from our own body, they meet this membrane and
have to go through
it
a
has
connection process.
It has to attach to something, and if our cell doesn't like it, it cannot attach and it can't get in. So it's like a lock and key. And even within our cell, each cell is the nucleus where our DNA is, which is like the blueprint to make all the proteins, enzymes that we need for our cells to function. Those blueprints are the DNA inside, and they're only inside the nucleus, and it has its own membrane.
Right.
And so it selectively lets things in and out of it.
Right. And then, so what about COVID, the actual virus? How does it work on our cells?
Well, our nucleus, when it needs more of an enzyme of a protein, it makes a little blueprint copy of just that piece to make that one protein, and it lets it, that's the messenger RNA, so it lets it out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm, which is like the soup.
Cell jelly, yeah.
Cell jelly soup. And their ribosomes, these little machines come and they assemble, it goes and gets amino acids to make that protein according to that blueprint. And then that messenger RNA just falls apart because it doesn't want it making that protein nonstop forever. Just enough that's needed for that moment. And so the messenger RNA falls apart. What happens is, so when the virus comes in, it can't just come in through the cell membrane, the outside membrane. It's got to be accepted in. And it's figured out a way to sneak itself in.
To mimic something else.
Yeah.
That will trick the cell into
Yeah, tricks the cell into thinking this is okay, so it lets the whole virus in. And then once it gets in, it commandeers those ribosomes, those little machines that make proteins.
And it reproduces
itself. It's tricked us to letting it in.
Right. So
the vaccine is, it mimics that, the
mRNA process?
Well, it mimics the outside of that virus.
Oh, right.
So our cells are going to let it in, but that's all it is. It's
just a piece of the virus.
It's the piece that's sort of the envelope that tricks our cells to let it in.
It's like the disguise piece.
Yeah. But the virus part that reproduces itself is not there. It's just it's like
a way to let our cells...
It's like the envelope without the contents in it. An empty envelope. And so our cells go ahead in the cytoplasm, makes more of that envelope, but not the virus part. There's no RNA involved, virus RNA involved. It just makes a whole bunch of the envelope. So it gives our body time to say, whoa, this is not good stuff. if it's the real virus, our body doesn't recognize that it's bad until it's already made a whole bunch of virus that's going to make us sick.
Right.
So this way, it's making a bunch of the envelope and saying, this is bad. If you see this envelope, don't let it in.
Okay. Yeah. That makes
so,
sense.
and then that messenger RNA envelope of the virus, just like our messenger RNA, it falls apart within a few hours. Our cells let it in, it makes a little bit of it, and then it falls apart.
Dissolves.
And it never goes into our nucleus. Our DNA is safe inside the nucleus, inside each cell.
Because the mRNA is a one-way thing, right?
It's a one-way thing. It's only in the soup. It doesn't get in.
Nucleus sends out the mRNA.
mRNA,
yeah.
But it doesn't let it back in.
It's not allowed to come back in.
So there's no messenger RNA going into where our DNA. So there's no, for one thing with a vaccine, there is no viral RNA.
Okay.
In the vaccine.
So it can't reproduce itself.
Can't reproduce. And even if it was, it can't go into our DNA. So even when we're infected with the virus, with the COVID virus, it never makes it into our DNA.
Right.
It's only in the soup, in the cytoplasm. So
yeah.
So the vaccine is safe because, one, there's no virus in it. It's just a mimic of the envelope, and it falls apart within hours.
Right. And another way you were telling me that you could think of it as a template. So it's delivering a template to your cells to say, put this in your file, and if you see it later, you'll recognize to reject it.
So we have different parts to our immune system. So some of our immune system makes cells that will attach when they see that envelope. They cover it up so it can't get into it. They deactivate it by covering up those little spikes.
So they can't attach.
So they can't attach to our membrane. One of the other things it does is it makes memory cells that say, when you see this envelope, don't let it in the house. So they're actually called memory cells.
Okay, and that's their job.
Yeah, and then we have white blood cells that our memory cells says, when you see this, engulf it.
Recruit them to go and...
They actually go eat it and tear it apart. They digest it. So very complex immune system, but anyway, the vaccine, all it does is train our body
to be ready
to destroy it without us having to learn the hard way, getting sick.
Right, when then all of your cells become overwhelmed and don't have the resources to overcome it.
Yeah, our bodies will remember it and fight it eventually if we get the virus, but in the meantime we can get really sick and we can have a lot of long-term...
It can do that long-term damage.
Yeah, about 8 to 10% of the people who get COVID will have long-term damage.
Right.
And so this just avoids all that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for sharing.